Hello, you're through to Books Boys. You've got Dean on the line. Who's calling?
Hey, Dean, it's Simon Hayes. It's a real pleasure to speak to you, and really looking forward to yet another edition of the show.
Ah, fantastic, Simon. We were just chatting about your book, so we have these series of coincidences every month for the last 3.5 years. Someone always calls in when we're chatting about their book. We were just chatting about Zero Risk, and I love this one. It's fantastic, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the show. How's your day going?
I'm having a fantastic day. For the first time in what seems like years, the sun is shining, and I'm in the center of London. So, what better place can you be? Which I guess leads on to the book, because obviously the book is very London centric.
It
And
is, yeah. It's very sort of finance based. Coming from Northern Ireland, I'm a little bit less in tune with the big city life of London, but I do visit a couple times a year. So this is essentially what will we say? It's a novella of centered around one crisis. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a black swan event. So something that no one thinks would happen until it's actually happened. And then you think, well, of course it could happen. And
Hmm.
the thing that happens is that on Christmas Day this year, a zero gets added to all of the nation's bank accounts. And you think, what's not to like about that? Sort of, why wouldn't I
Oh
like an
yeah, for
extra
the
zero?
for the customers, right?
Like, and then on Boxing Day, another zero gets added. And so, of course, the banks are running around thinking, is this cyber terrorism? Is it a prank? What the hell is this? And of course, we can fix it. But then another zero is added the next day. And if you do the maths, it doesn't take long to work out that within 6 days, everyone in the country is a millionaire. And so, what does that mean? So it's a race against time thriller of trying to fix the problem where basically money is very quickly becoming worthless. The economy is going bankrupt. Stocks and shares have zero value. And what the hell do we do about it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting because yeah, the initial reaction, everyone's going to be happy, brilliant, we've got more money, fantastic. But then yeah, if everyone's going to have more money and it's going to continue being more, you end up with a hyperinflation almost. You end up with the money being worthless.
Well, obviously, and that's what gets referenced in the book. Sort of one of the chief of staff to the prime minister suddenly sits down one evening and sort of starts pulling out reports about hyperinflation in Weimar
And
Germany,
yeah,
and
of
it's like
course.
I'm just like, or I was in Zimbabwe last year working there quite a lot, and of course the currency goes from 10 Zimbabwe dollars to the US dollar to 36,000 in not very long at all. And so it doesn't take long for these things to start having a real effect. And as you say, immediate reaction is, oh, well, that's great. I thought I had £100 in my bank account. Now I've got 1,000. But if everyone's in the same boat, what does it mean? Is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah. You can do the Venezuelan method, which is you just score out the last three zeros and say that economy fixed, we just divide everything.
Well,
No, fantastic. So let me ask you then, because something that really interested me is the morality of it. Because my initial, I'm very anti, capitalist and anti, big business. So when I'm reading it, I'm thinking, oh, it's very difficult for me to want to empathize with the bank, especially because the main guy, the Toad, right, our main guy, Martin Kellett's kind of a bit of an ass. So I'm thinking, okay, you're kind of a not a great guy, representing not a great industry potentially. And then I'm thinking, well, but you do need to fix your problem because it is a big problem and it is going to affect the country and potentially the world if we mess up the finances. So you kind of are almost rooting for him, a villainous character, to be able to fix it. Maybe you're rooting a little bit more for Tanner than Kellett himself, but you want
yeah,
it to get fixed.
yeah, 100% you want it to get fixed and for all the right reasons. And maybe to take a step back, the reason for writing the book was exactly my own disenchantment as a former banker a long time
Mm,
ago with the 2008 crisis and all of
sure.
that, because no responsibility was taken for any of this stuff. And here we are 15 years later, and you get all the ramifications of that we've seen over the last 15 years. And so, unashamedly, a morality tale, unashamedly set in London at Christmas. Now, I think one of your favorite authors maybe has done a morality tale set in London at Christmas,
I
but
believe
we won't
so.
believe so.
Yes.
No, so, but it's that you've hit the nail on the head. It's absolutely about sort of what are the real issues at play here. And one is the unfettered dependence on technology, and one is the unquestioning about the financial services system and
Mhm.
what the hell happens if it does go wrong.
Yeah. So you worked in this industry yourself, which of course informs a bit of the knowledge required to be able to write the story. Um, so no offense at saying that I'm a bit anti the whole system, but you got disillusioned then yourself. You said
Yeah,
that, yeah,
and look, absolutely no offense taken. I mean, I did it for best part of 20 years and then got out because I saw the way the industry was just getting more and more driven by bottom line. No
yeah,
one cared about the right values, the right behaviors. It was just, oh yeah, just put another zero on the profits and we all get bigger bonuses. And so I got out, and became a headhunter. And so then worked trying to find directors and senior executives for these big companies. And obviously the biggest question you had when you were interviewing these people, is this person going to be successful as the chairman of a big bank? Is he going to be a good guy to work with as the chairman of a bank? But most importantly, do you trust this guy? Will he do the right thing? And so that, again, that was probably the
yeah.
second big question behind writing this, of trying to think about, do you at the end of the day do the right thing?
Do you think that it's possible to be a good guy as the chairman of a bank? Because you've got to be obsessed with money, right? That's the way that's your whole job.
I do think actually it's the one good thing that came out of the crisis, that when people looked at governance and about sort of the morality behind these things,
Mm,
there was a bit of a sea change at that very high governance level. So the boards, the non-executive directors, whether it's changed in terms of the executives, the guys who are and ladies who are doing it day to day, I'd be more equivocal. But I do think, certainly in my experience, the people at the top, for the most part, in terms of the chairman, the non-executive directors, are much more cognizant of doing the right thing, and they're much more cognizant of the groupthink thing that got it
hmm.
all wrong back in the day when everyone just followed the same old sheep and just, oh
Yeah.
no, let's not bother asking any questions.
Yeah. So I suppose the big question is you referenced, of course, my good favorite author Dickens and the Christmas morality play. I suppose the big difference there is we see Scrooge, we see him improve, and we see, oh, fantastic, that's going to have a happy ending. And you could argue that the same is potentially true for Tanner, and I do like him in a way. But what about Kellett? I really don't feel that he's learned anything from the story.
No, he certainly doesn't appear to learn a lot from the story, and in a way, that's the key to the story, that Rob Tanner, who is his number two, realizes that he has supported the Toad in his rise to the top, but actually he's facilitated all of the bad behavior. So he's become, and so it's that realization that lots of people get in life, that actually they've been an enabler of bad behavior.
Yeah,
And so, absolutely, it's that arc of behavioral change that he realizes that in lots of aspects of his life, not just work, but in his private life, his relationship with his dad, his relationship with women, sort of maybe he could do better,
yeah.
because he's human.
Of course, and we do see him learn a little bit, which is fantastic. I was shocked, just maybe it's my own work ethic, when he kind of is going to leave the first time and then sees how bad the situation is getting. And it's like, well, I've just got to come back in. I've got to come back in and help the company. And I'm thinking, I can't imagine doing that for any any company I've ever worked for. But he's got good intentions, and he's, I'm going even on Christmas of all times,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and almost work for free here because I've already technically left and I'm going to try to help.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic.
And the reason he's doing all of this, as you get to know the story, actually, it's not for making money. The reason he wants to make money is because he supports a foundation which does good work in this case, the west of London, but it's for underprivileged kids and whatever.
Yeah.
So he's at heart, he's a good guy who's been subverted by by the making money, and so it's a journey of returning, I guess, to his real self and realizing that some of the things
Oh, yeah.
he's done, you can improve. And I mean, I love morality tales. I love where ordinary men and women do the wrong thing, realize they've made a mistake, screw up, and try and do something about it.
Yeah, and it's nice that he does change. Look, when I was much younger, a decade ago, I ran a small business myself, a takeaway business, for a few years. And already I notice, I don't think I like what it's doing to my moral character. Like I'm worrying a lot about the money, about the profits, the money coming in. You've got to sack people, you got to be ruthless sometimes. And I was like, no, that's not for me. I can't live in that kind of world. So now imagine, yeah, working with millions and billions of
Yeah.
pounds and running a massive, global bank or something, that it's almost impossible, I think, to not get corrupted. So we have a good guy in Tanner, and as you say, he's enabling, but he's rising through the ranks a little bit himself each time, and he's
Oh,
like, okay, this is working fine.
100%. Dean, I worked in that world and I got quite a big promotion. And so I was running a big securities business and I was based in Hong Kong and we had a business in Singapore. And the decision was taken by the folk in New York to close this business. And so they said to me, can you go and um, basically shut this business down? And so the very first time I went to this office to meet the dozen people working in it was to go and fire them. So it's like, hello, I'm your new boss. By the way, can we meet every 10 minutes so I can fire each of you? And I mean, that's why I got out of the business.
Wow.
Just can you imagine turning
I,
up? Hello, I'd like to fire you.
I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it. I don't have it in me. Wow, it's not good for your own mental health either, I suppose.
Oh, awful for your own mental health. And as you say, that's why I got out of it. I just couldn't do it.
Hmm. So let me ask you the crucial question here, because you mentioned at the beginning that, you think about the situation and you think maybe it is possible that this could happen. Do you think that Christmas is the right time to do this then? Because everyone's away, everyone's preoccupied, businesses are closed, people are off with their families, not answering their work phone. Is that when we need to strike?
Yeah. Well, as you know, it's a key part of the story, so I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's a reason, there's a very strong reason why the perpetrator of the attacks does do it then, but sort of the reason for doing it gets lost in a way, and so
Hmm.
you then have to get to the end to find out why on earth sort of it's happened that way, because the key part of the story, which is to me that the perpetrator of the attacks, the antagonist, is actually the hero of the piece, because the reason they're doing it is for all the quote unquote right reasons, but the way they choose to do it, interesting, shall we say? So, and again, it's what do you do in life when you're so violently, vehemently opposed to something that you need to see change and no change is happening. And so you take the law into your own hands and then things go cataclysmically wrong. And so unintended consequences. And
Yeah.
something I told my kids from the first day they could, you know, speak and listen. I said, choices and consequences. By all means, choose to do whatever you want to do, but then
Oh
suck it
yeah,
up.
then you gotta deal with
Take
the
take the deal,
consequences.
yeah, deal with the consequences. And so if I say to them now, what do you remember about your childhood? They come out with sort of three lines that were always these things that sort of got repeated to them year after year after year.
Something, one or two final things. Just one thing I love is actually just the title already, because I'm looking at this book before I've read it, and I'm thinking zero risk, and of course my first thought is, oh, this is something without risk. But then I'm looking, well, there's a lot of zeros here, and I'm thinking, what does this mean exactly? And of course, as you told us, the risk is not. It's not no risk, it's risk of zeros. The zeros themselves are the risk. They're being put onto the bank balances. So I thought it was a little clever title just to
Yeah.
begin with.
And I'm so glad you liked that. And the other thing was that to me, nothing we do in life is zero risk.
No,
Doesn't matter whether you're talking about falling in love or playing a game of sport or dancing on stage, anything you do, there's risk. And so you've got to weigh up sort of, is the risk worth taking, sort of, and all those things. And so there's no free lunch and there's very little in life that's zero risk.
absolutely. And not to spoil any details, but I am glad that we do get a little love story in the book somewhere, because I'm a sucker for a little love story. I need that in every book, every
Yeah,
film, every.
and a few of the early readers have really liked that because obviously in a lot of thrillers, you don't get it, or it can be quite, sort of masculine trope of
Hmm.
you and I were talking off air about James Bond and sort of stuff. And I thought it was important that it was done in, sort of a modern way, should we say?
Yeah, that's right. You recommended me some Ian Fleming books, so I'm gonna have to go and check those out. It's been a long time.
Yeah, but with the caveat that they are of their time, and so you have to have it with a healthy dose of health warning.
Yeah, I look. I'm reading the Victorian classics a lot of the time, and it's just constant the unabashed sexism, even from the female authors sometimes. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, I guess it's of its time, and I've just got to accept that, you know. But I always pointed out when we're doing the review, like this is not on, but you know, it is what it is. So I'll go check those out. But in terms of recommendations, what are you reading yourself at the moment?
At the moment, I'm reading a couple of history books. I've always had three books on my bedside table. I always have a thriller, I always have a history book, and then I always have something completely different. So it
Okay.
could be Dickens. I mean, to give you an idea, my favorite book of all time is A Gentleman in Moscow, Amor Towles. Don't
Oh,
know if
I've
you've
not
read that.
read it. No,
Oh,
I've heard of it, but I've not read it.
funny if it's being or the television adaptation is being shown at the moment. But honestly, please read it. I've read it three times, and I just think it's a weird premise in the sense that a guy in the Russian Revolution, an aristocrat, rather than being put against a wall and shot, is sentenced to life imprisonment within the best hotel in Moscow.
Okay.
Um, and so you think to yourself, how on earth can you make that into an interesting book? A guy is basically stuck within the four walls of a prestige hotel in Moscow in 1922. Seriously, it's such a good book,
Just
and
written a note for myself there to
it's
go and buy
it's
it.
beautifully written, and it's just clever. Um, what's on my Flip? I was looking at some of the books that sort of were in your sort of last few sort of podcasts, thinking, oh, I must go back and read some of those. So I think probably Frankenstein is going to be next fiction on my list because I am ashamed to say I've never read it.
Wow. Okay, that'll be interesting. I'm curious to know what you think of it. We liked it. We liked it. Unfortunately, I think I derailed things. I'm a big Dracula fan, so I
Yeah.
derailed things a little bit by comparing them, perhaps unfairly. But it's yeah, that's. But I think it's a good book and a very good concept, certainly. So I hope that I haven't spoiled your answer to the final question by asking for your recommendation, but we always like to ask if there's one book you wish you'd been the person to write that already exists, what would it be? Would it be the Gentleman in Moscow?
No, no, it wouldn't. Funny enough, it's a historical fiction book and it's a trilogy, but it would be the first book of that. I think Bernard Cornwell is a fantastic author of historical fiction, and his retelling of the Arthur legend
Hmm.
is, to me, the by far the best telling of the Arthurian tale. It's set in Dark Age Britain, so it's 6th century, blood and thunder, and it's just fantastic. So I would love to have written that because it's just you can't have a better story than the legend of King Arthur, and he just tells it so cleverly. So maybe that. Another book which I just love, which is again, talk about James Bond being of its time, even more of its time. Brideshead Revisited. I love Brideshead.
Hmm. Okay.
So that uh, some of the Anthony Burgess books, I just
Yeah,
think,
sure.
I mean, oh, so many. But I mean, you've mentioned them, and I mean, you can't beat Dickens. I
No,
mean,
mine. I don't
seriously.
think anyone's ever asked me to answer this question myself before. Mine is Oliver Twist. I'm just going to throw it out there. That's the book I would
Huh.
want to write. That's my, that's perfection for me.
And why that one of the Dickens canon?
Maybe because it's the first one I really loved. It's not the first one I read. Bleak House was the first one I read, but it's a bit drier than your usual
Mm.
Dickens. I think Oliver Twist, I sort of read it and it just blew me away. I just had this moment of like, this is what I want from every book, you know? This is like, I need to find more of this. It's just this fantastic moment where I thought, right, I'm going to go order the complete catalogue of Dickens and just get stuck in after this one, you know?
M-
Fantastic.
My first was A Tale of Two Cities,
Sure.
and the opening line will never leave me.
I have a theory, a very unpopular theory about A Tale of Two Cities, which is the opening line and the closing lines are fantastic, and then everything in between I don't care for.
Oh my God, now I'm going to have to go back and check my opening line and closing line.
It's got very catchy opening lines that everyone likes to study in literature class, and then the rest of it, it's not my favorite Dickens. It's a little bit less witty. It's a little bit more serious. I prefer his kind of caricatures of London, working class people, and that's what I go to Dickens for. So I'm reading Two Cities, and I'm thinking, no, it's fine, but it's not
It's fine.
super Dickens.
And modern books, what would be the one? Is there one that springs to mind?
There's a book we reviewed a few months, well, I guess about a year ago now, called Winterset Hollow, which my co-host Alex is now going to review on this episode, and that's a book that I really, really love. It's kind of Watership Down meets Battle Royale. That's a fantastic, fantastic book. But in terms of other modern books that I really love, I don't know. I like some Spanish books. I've been studying Spanish, so I read some books in Spanish, and there's a fantastic Spanish author, called Carlos Ruiz Zafón, who wrote this quadrilogy of books about it's called The Cemetery of Lost Books, and it's just this whole story about this guy, and it branches into his family, and it becomes a big. And the last book's almost a detective novel. It just branches and branches. It's 1,000 pages, I think, the last book, but just a fantastic epic series from him. Absolutely love it. So I think, yeah, I'm reading classics in English, and then for modern books, I'm going Spanish.
Fantastic.
I forgot to ask you. I should have followed up. What history books are you usually reading? I mean, you mentioned Arthur, but are there other areas of interest?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm reading a history of the United States, the Penguin
Okay.
history of the United States, because I don't know, I love cowboy movies. And something came up recently on television, and I suddenly thought, actually, you don't know anything about America before the cowboys came along, and
Yeah,
that's
basically.
shocking. So I've gone back to the beginning, so that's what I've got on my side table at the moment.
Nice. It's not an area I ever looked at. My degree is in history, but it was mostly ancient Greek and a little bit of Roman, so I never got into really anything too modern, but that's fantastic. Well, I will let you go, but first, would you like to tell us, where to get the book or plug your website or anything like that?
Yeah, the website is zero-risk.com, and that will take you to all of the links you could ever need in terms of buying the book. So zero-risk.com.
Awesome. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. Well, Simon, thank you so much for calling in. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.